All right, so let's get started. Again, my name is Bob Cohen. I want to welcome you. I think this workshop is going to be pretty interesting for those of you who are looking at nonprofits. I think you're going to get a great deal out of what David Holmes is going to be presenting. I'd like to go through a couple SCORE slides just to give you an idea about who SCORE is and what SCORE does. Many of you already know, but let me just share my screen with you. And I'm going to go through that real quick, and then we'll turn it over to David. So just let me know if everybody can see my SCORE slide up there. I think we're good. Good. Okay. Um, so um, SCORE's mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. And certainly this workshop is part of the education that we do as well. We want to make sure everybody has the support that they really need to get their business up and running. And that includes nonprofits, which is why we're here today. You all know that small business drives our economy, and about 50% of our economy is because of small business. So all those small business people that are out there working hard to keep their businesses going and to get some generational wealth, that's really important. And again, today we're going to focus on nonprofits, so it's a little bit different, and David will explain all that to you. We have found that anybody that does 3 or more hours of mentoring with our mentors here in SCORE really end up having better revenue and increased business growth. So that's really a good thing. So I recommend for all of you who go to SCORE's website, pick a mentor out and start your mentoring sessions now. We've got some really good, strong nonprofit mentors as well. So we've got over 10,000 volunteers throughout the country, and we're here waiting for you all to join us and help us and work with us and get help from us and learn. We deliver most of what we do totally free, and that's because we are supported by the SBA and the federal government. We've got our 10,000 volunteers are strictly that, all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. So we're here because we want to be, and you'll see that with a network this big, we've got some expertise in areas that are really going to be helpful for you. If you go to the SCORE website, you will find a lot of wonderful resources that you can use both for profit and for nonprofit businesses that are available, templates, business plans, workshops, webinars, all kinds of stuff available. It's all free. One thing that we do have is a code of ethics. We are not allowed to make money in any way, shape, or form by working with you and your business. We may not use any of the information we get from you in our database. We use it in our database to communicate with you, but it doesn't go anywhere else. And then all the information that we collect from you as clients is strictly confidential. And that's something that the U.S. government insists on, and we do as well. All of our mentors sign off on a code of ethics every year that emphasizes those things I just spoke about. And then I want you just, if you get a chance, to get onto our website and take a look. Very easy. You just enter your zip code in, and you will find that it is easy to find a mentor. We can match you up, or you can match yourself up with a mentor based on looking at mentor profiles. So here's a QR code that you can use and find us and start working with us. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Dave. I want to introduce you to David Holmes from Candid, and he's going to tell you a little bit about Candid and a little bit about himself, and then go right into the workshop. So let me stop sharing, and David, take it away. David, you're on mute right
now. Hi, everybody. Thank
Hey,
you, Bob, and welcome. I am Dave Holmes. I am with Candid, and this is a class that we call Are You Ready to Start a Nonprofit? And we're so glad to be working with SCORE on this because SCORE does the work that we can't do. We can tell you the background and the step-by-step information, but SCORE is able to provide you with the mentoring and assistance that we wish we could do, but we're glad that we can partner and support both organizations this way. If you don't know anything about us, I'll tell you a little bit about it. But first of all, I want to make sure that you have my contact information. I am the educational programming manager for Candid, and that's my email address. And you should get a copy of the slides and the recording so that you'll know all of the different things that I go through. If you don't know about Candid, Candid is a national nonprofit organization that's made up of two other nonprofits. Candid started 6 years ago when the Foundation Center, which had been around since the 50s, and GuideStar, which had been around since the 70s, got together. Foundation Center, where I started working a long time ago, was the place where you would go to find information on grants and grant funding. And we have a database called Foundation Directory where you can search to find grant opportunities from private foundations and other private organizational sources. We still help people. We have partners throughout the country to help people as well. We partnered with GuideStar. GuideStar.org is a place where you would go to find a listing of every official nonprofit in the United States, everyone that is certified by the IRS as a 501c3 public charity is listed on GuideStar. And what you can do if you find yourself on GuideStar is update your information. So if you are a nonprofit already and you are looking to make sure you get the most essential information on yourself out there to people, you would go to guidestar.org, click on Update Nonprofit Profile, and follow the steps to go ahead and earn what we call seals of transparency, share additional information, and make yourself very visible to the partners that we have out there, like Facebook, like donor advised fund managers, like other givers. Together, what Candid does is try and collect information on everything to do regarding the nonprofit world. We have our data team and a research team that goes through and keeps track of how things are working for nonprofits and what the best processes are. We have a section on our website called Candid Learning, which I'll probably show you at a certain point in time, that will help you learn other things about how to write grant proposals and how to create a fundraising plan. And we try to make sure that this information is freely available. Almost everything we provide in terms of training and learning is free. So I will make sure that we show you some of that before we finish up. We have partners throughout the United States and Mexico. These are libraries and other nonprofit centers that have free access to our foundation directory to search for grants, and our GuideStar Pro program, which enables you to look up nonprofits in detail. Those are available at all 1,600 plus locations across the country in Mexico. And if you're not sure if there's one in your area, you can go to candid.org/find-us, and you can see all of the different locations where we are. Go in there, ask at the reference desk, say you're looking for grants, say you're looking to look up nonprofits, and you will probably be using our resources to do that. I want to thank you for joining. This is one of those programs where you don't have an ability to speak and ask your question out loud, but I'll be paying very close attention to the chat. So if you have a question about what you're doing in the chat, I will try and address it. If it's more of a logistical thing, Bob is in the back kind of watching those and responding to those as well. And I'll pause at different times just to check the chat and see if there's anything going on. But in the next hour, what I want to talk to you about is the steps to start a nonprofit, both the legal steps and some of the other things that you will need to worry about. And I think sometimes the legal steps are what you get concentrated on because they're tricky and they take a lot of time, and it's difficult sometimes filling in all the forms that need to be done. But that's not the only thing that goes into starting a nonprofit. There are many other considerations you have to pay attention to. So I will talk about those. And I will also show you where you can find additional alternatives, information about other ways of doing nonprofit work without starting a nonprofit, and some additional resources to help you as you get started in this. So hopefully this will be taken care of. And by the way, this is going to be recorded and sent to you as well. Yes. So I'm talking about nonprofits. I should probably define what a nonprofit is. And this is according to the IRS, because the Internal Revenue Service is the organization, the federal organization that oversees nonprofits and regulates them. So this is how they describe a nonprofit public charity, a 501(c)(3), according to that part of the law that designates them. It's exclusively for one or more charitable purpose, and they define those pretty much the way that you would understand it's help education and health and human services and working with youth and providing environmental assistance. All of these are the charitable purposes as defined by the IRS. That's one thing that a nonprofit has to do. The other thing is that it can't be for private benefit. So a nonprofit isn't run by one person who gets the income from everything and uses it for their own personal gain, nor is it board members that are getting a lot of money. All the money that is raised by a nonprofit, it will pay the salaries of the people that work for it, but it's not being done to benefit them. It's being done to benefit people. And most of the money a nonprofit raises goes back to the services that the nonprofit provides. There's also a law about not, as a public charity, a 501(c)(3), a nonprofit will not attempt to influence legislation or participate in a political campaign as a substantial part of its activities. There is definitely room for advocacy in the nonprofit world and supporting different issues, but supporting specific candidates is not legal. And so, as a 501(c)(3) public charity, that is regulated and watched. This slide is pretty detailed and scary to a lot of people, but it is the steps to getting that 501(c)(3). And that, again, you probably that phrase 501(c)(3) rolls off my tongue because I've said it a lot, but that's the part of the Internal Revenue Service code that describes a public charity and becoming one. These are the steps that you need to follow in order to get a 501(c)(3). It's not a one-step process, and it happens in two places. It happens on the state level, where you register with Secretary of State's office and you file incorporation after you create a board of directors, who are the people in charge of the organization, and develop the rules for how that board operates and how the nonprofit operates. So I'll go into some of that detail, but you have to get this all together, incorporate with your Secretary of State's office, whatever state you're in. And then once you incorporate there, you can go forward and working with the Internal Revenue Service, you get an EIN and then you file for federal tax exemption using different forms. They have 1023s and 1023 EZs, which are for smaller organizations. This is a legal process that you can go through. I tend to recommend people, whatever state they're in, to go to their Secretary of State's office and look for the charitable laws and the charitable process for their state. I think it works much better if you work with that particular state government to make sure you're doing the process correctly. But when it comes to the federal government, I'm going to stop sharing this slide for just a second and bring up a website. I actually think that the IRS has a lot of great information on its website. It's sometimes a little difficult to find. And it used to be right on the homepage, irs.gov. Now it's a little bit more buried. I just searched the word charities because what I was looking for was this information on charities and nonprofits. Even when you get to this page, it's a little confusing. But that's why I want to suggest you go to a particular part of the IRS website if you want to learn some of the best information. And that section is called the life cycle of an exempt organization. You see that at the top of the page there. You can see the URL, it tends to change, so I'm a little bit reluctant to copy it and paste it in anything. But I will say that this is where I go when I want to make sure I get the right forms and the right processes. Because it takes you through all of the different steps. It takes you through what you need to do to start out. It takes you through how to apply for exemption and what forms you need to do and how that's processed. It takes you also through the things that happen after you become an exempt organization. So the IRS gets your information, maybe asks you for more information, and then makes a ruling on what you are, whether you're a nonprofit or not. It sometimes takes a long time. It can take up to, I've heard 6 months, I've heard 18 months. It can take a long time to get all of those papers through. But once you are exempt and you receive your 501(c)(3) status, your letter that indicates that you are a charity, there's still things you need to do. There's required filings that you have to make. There's ongoing compliance you have to report. If you're going to be fundraising, you have to register in different states that you're fundraising in. And there's also things that you have to keep track of. This particular section of the IRS's website is really, really good. And there's still one more click that you have to do once you get to this page is you want to see what it is for a public charity. And here's where all the documents are, where the bylaws and state law requirements might be for your state, how to get an EIN, how to register for charitable solicitation. That's what I mentioned, that you have to register with your state and report to the state. And then what you need to do on the federal level to get your nonprofit registered. The publication numbers don't always seem to make sense. They have like kind of random numbers. 4220 describes how to apply for a 501(c)(3). 557 is about tax exempt status. The nice thing about this page is that all of the forms in their latest version are linked to from here, and it's sometimes difficult otherwise to find them. So I would go find the life cycle of a public charity on the IRS's website and bookmark that, because you'll probably be going back to that at some point. I'm just taking a look at some of the questions. Can a company be both for-profit and nonprofit? Is it restricted to US only, or can it spread to other countries? These are things that, by the way, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant. So I want to make sure that that's out the gate before I say some of the things. You can start a company and incorporate it with a nonprofit arm. If you're a for-profit, you can have, as long as the monies are kept separate, there are lots of different ways. Different states have different rules on how those are done. So I'm not going to be able to walk you through that. The 501(c)(3), the public charity, is a United States certification for a United States-based nonprofit, but it can provide assistance and have as its main purpose assistance to other countries. It's really important, if you are going to be doing something complex and you get into some of these legal documents, that you work with a lawyer, that you work with somebody who can answer your questions. I point out that you can get assistance from pro bono lawyers that might be in your local bar association. And I send a lot of people to I'm in Cleveland, and I send a lot of people to the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association because they have a nonprofit helping group. But whatever you're doing, make sure that you check at least get some explanation, get some assistance with things that are complicated like that. Some of the other things that are asked here, can board members be just one person? A board is usually at least 3 people, according to most states, I believe. It might be even more people than that, because the board is not, the idea is with a public charity that it is not set up to be run by one person. And if your board is one person, you're not really running a nonprofit. A public charity has public representation. So at least two other people are going to have to be on your board. And those people can decide to, if you're the president, to get rid of you if they want to do that. That's the element of a public charity. It's not particularly owned by one person, and it should not to be. It really depends on your state, what you need to file and where. If you're filing with different states, the way that you file for tax exempt status and the way that you file for just charitable registration in order to fundraise is slightly different. So take a look at some of the descriptions here on this website, particularly the state registrations and the state reporting that you'll need to do. It tells you the state law requirements for bylaws and the number of people who should be on your board. All of that information is linked to from this page. So I encourage you to take a close look at it. All right, so I'm going to go back to the slides and we'll get into some more questions in a little bit. Please do put the questions in the chat. I'm looking at both, but it's a little bit easier to just look at one. So you don't need to use the Q&A panel for this. You can just put it in the chat. I do see a question in Q&A about fiscal sponsors. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to talk about that as an alternative to starting a 501c3 charity of your own. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slides. And I stopped at this scary slide with all these different things on it. And one thing that you do notice, before I leave this particular area, is that there is a cost to it. I work for Candid, and a lot of times people think, well, the easiest solution to everything is to go and get a grant from a foundation, and that'll pay for everything, including all the stuff that I need to start up my nonprofit. And the honest truth is that it won't, because grants go to charitable organizations, but generally they do not go for the cost of starting one. So you will need to raise the certain amounts of money that you need to do to incorporate in your state. I know in the state of Ohio, it's about $100 to incorporate as a nonprofit that you pay to the state. On the federal level, depending on the size of your organization, the costs can be upwards of $800, $850. It changes depending on the size of what you're doing and what you're filing. But know that that's an expense that you're going to have to take into consideration as you do this. All right, I'm going to continue to go on here. The other part of this, though, the thing that goes beyond the legal elements, is that what you're creating is not just a legal entity. And that doesn't mean that if you just create this legal entity, you're going to start getting money given to you immediately. It doesn't work that way. All of these things that are listed here are important things to consider. They're all key parts of what you need to think of as you create your organization. So I'm going to go through and just go over them to make sure that you understand what a funder and what donors tend to look at. We tend to look at things from the point of view of what a foundation would fund. So I'm going to be telling you about the kind of things that they want to make sure are clear for your organization. The mission of the organization, that is the guiding principle of the organization. And the easiest way, this is a long description of it, but the easiest way I have to understand a mission statement, is that it describes what you do every day. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? We provide after-school training to children in Greater Cleveland who are below the poverty level. That could be a mission statement, just made that up. But the idea of a mission statement is that it is the focus of everything your nonprofit does. The nonprofit as an entity is created, and the board is their responsibility is to uphold this mission, the meaning of the organization, what the organization does every day. And if the organization does not uphold its mission, that is considered the failure of the organization. What is even more common is that a nonprofit will start with a mission that's clear about what they're going to do, but they realize that they could get more money from a funder or another source of money, that if they changed, if they like drifted away from their mission. And the term mission drift and mission creep is a very big problem in new nonprofits, because the certainty of the mission is really what everything is based on. And any funder and any person that is going to donate to you is going to go back to that mission to see a clear description of what you care about and what you mean. Now, behind that mission, you may have a vision, and the vision is sort of the way the world is going to look if you accomplish the mission. A world where no child goes to bed hungry, a world where every child by third grade can read at a good level. Those are visions. And the vision is implied behind the mission, but even more basic for the way the mission works is your values. And why is this important? Any nonprofit, when it starts, is embodying certain values within its mission, within its vision. And these are the things that you will use you will talk about and you will use as part of the language of deciding how your organization runs. And when you look for funding, whether it's from government or from private foundations or individuals, the reason why people give to you is because they care about your mission and they share the values that you have. So it's important to be very clear, and this is just a little exercise. I'm not going to ask you to do it here and now, But I would say it's very important to be very clear about these things when you're starting your nonprofit. And I want to say that the mission might be the hardest thing sometimes to come up with. But if you build on it, if you build on what you value and what your vision is for the future, this is what we want to aim towards and try to make happen. When you state your mission, you want to make sure that everything you state in there is encompasses what you're going to do, fits within that mission. And I'm going to show you in a little while. I don't want to go back to the website right now, but on our Candid website, we have a section of information that helps you with some of the different parts of this. And it might be that it helps you create your mission. And we also have things that create other aspects of the startup. So I'm going to talk about all these, but then I will show you a part of our website that will provide help to you. So keep that in mind as we go on. So you have a clear idea of what you're going to make, and maybe you've gone and incorporated your organization. Part of what you should do while you're in the process of starting a nonprofit is know who else is out there. You conduct what's called an environmental scan. And that sounds a little bit more scary than it is, but really what it means is who else in your area is doing this kind of work? Oftentimes, when you start a nonprofit, you think, well, you're the only ones who have thought of this and who are, this is a great idea, and I don't know anybody that's doing it. But the important thing is to do your research on that and to see if that's really true. Because I'll tell you, if you're going to start a nonprofit and then hope to get it funded through grants and other donations, people need to know why you are distinct. What makes your organization vital for this area? There is a lot of pushback from nonprofits, from foundations, I should say, about nonprofits that are started. And the feeling that doesn't mean that your organization, your nonprofit, isn't vital. It just simply means that um, you should be very clear about what makes your organization distinct. So who else is doing the work? If they're doing it in another area, that's fine. You might be modeling what you do on a successful model out there, and that's a good thing for you. You might be innovative in the way that you provide your services, and there's something that you're doing that no one else is doing. And I have heard about different nonprofits and I've gone, oh, I've never heard of anything like that. And that's a good thing sometimes. It maybe answers a question that hasn't been answered before. But if you are feeling that you are duplicating something and you look and you see, well, we provide after school services in this area just like this nonprofit does and that nonprofit does, what is it that makes you distinct? Why are you indispensable? Because if you can't answer that question, why are you indispensable? A funder is going to ask you that question. Why should I give to you rather than this established nonprofit? So the better your environmental scan, and this is not something that has to be extremely formal, but it should be clear. Find about what's going on in your area. Go through the 211 service or the first call for help, whatever it's called in your area that the United Way might be running, and see who else is doing work like yours. Talk to the people at the local library. How can they help you research who does similar kinds of nonprofits? Because you want at least to be able to distinguish yourself from them. But and this is a good point. Jessica makes a point. I want to duplicate something that's done, but change how it's done. That is an innovation. That is a change that might be seen as vital from the people that want to fund it. It's been done this way before, but it's never really been done well enough, and there's still this problem. So that's how we're different. If you can explain how you're different, then that's going to be a good thing to be. Before I get into this, I'm just going to look at a couple of the questions that have come in. No founder, board president who's now earning money as executive director. How is that according with nonprofit guidelines? I would say that I would be very careful about that. Founder and board president who is now the executive director. I hope that there are other board members and other people that are running the organization. You can certainly have a working board. You can certainly have an executive director be on your board and be a paid staff member as well. But I should say that in general, as we get into talking about board members here, they are not paid. Board members for nonprofits do not get paid. And that's why they are the key volunteers of an organization. What's really expected of board members is not that they get paid, but they donate to that organization. Most funders are going to ask you this question at some point. How many of your board members make a donation to your organization? And the correct answer to that, and the one that they want to hear, is all of them. So your board often is the number one place, the number one group of people who does the work for the organization. They provide the time, the talent, and the treasure, the donations that your organization needs to keep going. By the way, a great place to find out about boards and how boards work is boardsource.org. They are the national authority on boards and board members, how boards are organized, how you can create committees, what if you need an advisory board, how to deal with problems on your board, how to deal and get boards to fundraise for you. This is all stuff that BoardSource collects and creates for you. Do you have staff members? Maybe you have one staff person. Maybe you have an unpaid staff at the moment. It's all volunteer. Some organizations consistently stay all volunteer. I believe SCORE is an all volunteer organization. But most organizations are thinking about growing and growing to have staff members. But that doesn't usually happen right away. Nobody is going to give you a grant to hire 10 people as the first step of your nonprofit. Oftentimes, the work is something that keeps getting done before you start hiring staff. But as you do hire staff, you have to also create clear rules for how the staff works and clear guidelines for it. Maybe you have some sort of manual that describes how your organization's staff are hired and the rules related to that. Most of the time, you're working with board members and additional volunteers and people contributing to you as you get starting up. And those board members are going to be asked probably at the very beginning to be much more of a working board, a board that is involved in doing the services that you provide, in doing fundraising, and doing other events. As the organization develops, you raise money that makes it possible for you to hire staff, and that's where most people are headed toward. We had another couple of questions. I just want to make sure that I answer them. Can a nonprofit spend money on other charity work than what is their own mission or vision is? A nonprofit is supposed to do things in keeping with its own mission. And if it does things outside of that, it runs the risk of running into legal problems. I don't know the full details of what's going on. I would make sure to read the IRS rules on that because that can be very dangerous. Can nonprofits spend money on foreign nonprofits? I had a webinar yesterday with an organization that works in both the United States and Mexico. And they made it quite clear that a nonprofit, and I'm again not a lawyer, not an international law person, but I'd say that they made it quite clear that a nonprofit raising money in the United States, when that money is moved out of the United States into another country, there are definite concerns. There are homeland security concerns. There are other international law concerns. You have to be very clear. You can do it. You can help organizations in other countries. Foundations can give grants to other countries. Nonprofits can work to support projects in other countries, but are legal regulations about it. So it's a very, very good idea to work with some legal consultant on that. Can I be the founder and a paid CEO? You sure can. Yeah, anybody can be paid for working for the organization. You have to have the money in the organization to pay you, and the board has to hire you, and the board has to supervise you. That's what a board does. And I definitely make sure, I mean, I could spend the whole time talking about boards, and I will send you to BoardSource, and I will also say that we have a couple of classes just solely on boards and how they work that might help you out. And I'll show you those before the end of this webinar. All right, so let's keep going with the different things that a nonprofit needs to think about. Started a nonprofit, you need to get it legally set up. You need to make sure you have a clear mission and vision. You need to have a board of directors and rules for how those work, bylaws. What you're doing should be oriented around addressing the need in your community. And I think a lot of people, when they start a nonprofit, they get kind of caught up in the need of the organization itself. We need to hire staff. We need to get an office. I've been told by a couple of different people that have come in my office, I want to get started doing this work, and all I need is a building. Well, generally, that is not the need that funders are interested in when they are supporting your organization. And I have not yet found a funder that is willing to buy a building for somebody so that they can then start doing nonprofit work. What is most important to the funders out there is the need that you respond to in the community. Who is unable to do something? Who is not lacking in something? Who are the people that you work with? And the more you know about them, the more you know about their need, the more that you involve those people and not just say, well, that's that group of people, they need my help, and stand outside them, but involve them, have them on your board of directors, have them as part of the people that are making the decisions about themselves. That is being true to the need of the organization. It's not enough to just say there's a problem out here. You need to have statistics on it. You need to have clear information, because that is the core to any kind of fundraising that you're going to do. We teach proposal writing, and we teach putting together a case statement for fundraising for your organization. And the most important thing is to know, who are you helping? What is the issue in the community? What are some statistics about it? How do you know it's an issue? Do you work with the people directly who are not able to do what they want? Do you know this population in this town, how many people there are and how many are in this kind of situation? The clearer you are on the need that you talk about, the more important it is. The clearer you are, the easier it's going to be to go ahead and fundraise for your organization. Once we have a question about, I couldn't have a teen as a board member, they would have to be an adult, or I can have a junior board team. You can do lots of different things. I'm not sure about the law in terms of age limit. I know that there are many organizations I know who have something like a junior board or something like a training, particularly foundations, which are nonprofit organizations, often bring in family members at younger ages to be involved and to create that. I would check the laws in your state and the IRS's laws as well. For programs and services, when you are creating your nonprofit, it's important that you are clear about the services that you're going to provide. So you have this need that you've identified in the community. Everything that you talk about related to your programs is going to be working to address this need. That is how a funder is going to look at you. Who are you? What's your organization? But even more so, what do you do and how do you do it? And we teach this in the proposal writing because it's key to getting people to fund you, is to know not just that you recognize the need, but you have clear goals and specific objectives tied to what you do. So if you say, well, what we're going to do is going to teach reading to children after school, anybody who is looking at that program wants to know which children, from where, how many times are you going to be offering these kind of services? What kind of services are you're going to offer? And how do you know when you are successful? That is the key part. Oftentimes in program design is not just saying we're going to do this, but we're going to do this and we're going to keep track of the essential things, the numbers, but also the changes in the people that we serve in order to measure how successful we are. And I get a lot of questions when I teach proposal writing and other classes, like, how do I know how to measure success in something that is difficult? How do I measure improvement in the environment? How do I measure something where the real change happens many years down the line? There is no perfect way to show success. There are simple ways. If you want to teach people to read better, you test them at the beginning, you do your program, you test them at the end, and it tells you, whether your program did, at least from those tests, did what it was supposed to do. What it doesn't tell you is what happened to get you there. So part of the ability of creating a program is not just saying we're going to do this and then we're going to check at the end to see if it worked, but it's doing the things that you're going to do, but also getting feedback, checking on the progress. So when you teach somebody to read, you don't just do the classes and test them at the end. You have ways of checking. Are they learning? You have testing that you do. You have maybe back and forth discussions about how it's working, and you help people get to the level that they need to get to. You don't just do the thing and then expect that it's going to automatically work. You have to have ways of making and measuring that success. So we're going to get into fundraising here. And there's a question here. Can you sell a product, a nonprofit that benefits, I think that means to be asked, can you sell a product as a nonprofit that benefits the community? Is it within your mission? There is something called unrelated business income. And I'm not, again, a tax lawyer. But a nonprofit that is selling products, if it's not directly related to the mission of the organization, may have to keep that money separate and it might be taxable. So I would pay very close attention to what you're selling. If certainly any nonprofit, one of the main ways, in fact, the number one way that a nonprofit makes money in the United States is by charging for things. You charge and you think of it and you don't even realize that this is happening. Some of the biggest nonprofits are hospitals. They charge for people that are coming in there. People charging for different services, charging the government for a contract, charging for admission, charging for a summer camp, charging for the programs that are offered. That is definitely something that nonprofits use to fundraise for their organization. Writing grants is a fantastic way of adding additional funding, but it is not the only answer. You have to come up with a budget. You have to come up with a clear idea. What does everything cost? And I was working with somebody earlier this week, and they had a really rough budget, but they didn't have any details. What is the money going to be used for? You can ask for $1 million or say your budget is $1 million, but how specifically does that relate to the services that you provide? And secondly, where do you plan to get that money? Any funder that you're going to ask for a grant from is not going to give you, I will say almost across the board, I can't think of any instance where it's true. They will definitely not give you all the money that your nonprofit needs because legally that turns you into them, that you are the only source of funding. You're no longer a public charity because you are not publicly supported. You're only supported by one source. So foundations don't want to give you all the money of your budget. They want to give you maybe a portion that works on a particular project, but they expect to see funding from other sources. The number one donating source that nonprofits have, not earned income. Sometimes earned income doesn't make sense. If you're providing services to unhoused people, they generally can't pay for that service. You're going to be getting money from federal government, from United Way, from foundations. And the number one source for most nonprofits is individuals, people that are giving to their favorite church or their favorite charity, their favorite organization that they connect with. Individual giving, including boards, is the number one source. It's usually 2/3 to 3/4 of the money that nonprofits raise from donations. Now, your nonprofit isn't necessarily going to be that way. We have a class called Introduction to Fundraising Planning. By the way, all these classes I keep mentioning to you, they're all free. So I want you to know that you can always take them as a support to this information. But fundraising planning talks about thinking, what makes the most sense for fundraising for your organization? What should your funding mix be? Sometimes you mix it up and it's coming from corporations and it's coming from individuals and it's coming from big foundations and you have a government support and you earn some money, have earned income that pays for it. It's going to be different for every organization and it's not always clear what the most effective way is. But looking for foundations to be the ultimate support of your organization, that doesn't always work out. And it certainly doesn't work out early on because new organizations tend to take a while to establish themselves and take a while for funders to, foundations in particular, to want to invest in them. Certainly government sources of funding. Usually it takes a while. You have to start doing your work. You have to start raising money other ways. And you can raise money through crowdfunding and events, individual donations, charging for different things. But you have to put together a mix that makes the most sense. And it evolves as you go on. As you get more established, you may be able to get more direct grants to your program. But it's difficult to say, this is the only way it's going to do without thinking who's connected to you, who makes the most sense for you to approach. Once you do all this, of course, you have to keep track of it. When you get a grant, a funder doesn't want to give a grant to an organization that just, sort of puts it in a shoebox and that's where the money goes. And you just take it out of the shoebox when you need it. They want to know that you are keeping track of your finances, that the money that they give you is tracked so that you can say exactly where that grant went to and what it was used for, because often you have to report that kind of level back. Unrestricted funds or general operating grants are pretty rare. Most grant makers are going to be giving for specific projects, for specific returns that they're expecting, because they have a mission and vision too. They want to give grants for you to carry out the thing that they consider most important. And they need to check to make sure that you've done that. So they often ask for reporting. Individual givers are often less restrictive. And you can get more sources of funding through events and through other types of creative fundraising processes. So think about all of that and all the different ways that make the most sense for your organization. One thing that is connected to this, and people don't always see the connection, is marketing of your organization. They think, well, marketing, I'll just pay somebody to advertise or pay to make sure that we get the word out about things to our community. Just because you exist doesn't mean the community is going to respond to you. Just because you are doing something great, you have to have a way to make a connection. And it isn't always posting something on your website or sending something in an email or sending out letters or putting posters around. It's different for every community that you reach. Any community that you're going to be reaching out to is going to want to know more about you, and they don't know who you are. You're coming at them new. They may be a little reluctant to do the things that you do. So one thing I suggest when you are trying to consider these two things, how do you reach your community and how you keep them informed, is who can you partner with? Partnering is vital for any nonprofit organization. I mean, I'm partnering right now with SCORE as just to do this program. That kind of partnering, that kind of shared elements is more and more important to funders. When nobody wants to see an organization that is trying to do things without recognizing that there are other nonprofits that might be able to help them out. If you're doing a program that teaches kids that are in a school district, you might want to be partnering with that school district. You might want to be partnering with the other places that those kids go after school so that you can work together. And that partnership might also be the promotion of your organization. If you know that kids find out about books by seeing them in doctor's offices or seeing them in other locations that they hang out, partnering with a group like that to encourage kids to read makes a whole lot of sense. That kind of creative partnership doesn't necessarily bring in cash money, but it has the value of spreading the word more than you could do just by paying a marketing expert to someone to do this kind of work. All right, I've kind of started with all these overwhelming things and all these other considerations that you have to think about in addition to just the legal considerations. There are more. Some of the things that I mentioned here are big considerations for organizations. If you don't have space, where are you going to be able to do your programming? Do you have a collaboration or an agreement with another place to get space? Because raising money to build a building is a major effort for most nonprofits. More often than not, you work in a shared space or you work in a space that may not be completely adequate for the first times that you do. So maybe you share with other nonprofits in a nonprofit space that gives you back office equipment and back office, the printers and the computers and the Wi-Fi and everything are part of that space too. Certainly, if you need equipment for your program, you need to find a way to make sure that you secure it, maybe through donations. Maybe it needs to grow as you grow. If you're working with kids, if you're doing a lot of traveling for the program, you probably need to get insurance. Among those insurances might be insurance for your directors and officers, which sometimes the person doesn't want to be on your board because they feel like it might involve their own personal cost, or they might get held responsible for what you do. The way that nonprofits in the United States are structured, the board is, as long as it's doing its job with the nonprofit, it is the nonprofit that suffers any costs if they go bankrupt or anything like that, not the individuals. But there's still a lot of a consideration related to insurance. One place I would recommend, and it's different for every state, again, is to look for your statewide association of nonprofits. In Ohio, it's the Ohio Association of Nonprofit Organizations, but there are different organizations. Some of them are statewide, some of them are regional, that often have buying plans for getting insurance if you need that, and other advice related to it. Finally, there's the human resource elements. There's that staff manual and all those other kind of guidelines for how your organization is run. As you begin to grow, you begin to consider all of these things. So, and oh, I'm sorry, I almost forgot. Everything that you do is constantly being needed to be reported. Sometimes it's for grants, but for the IRS, every year that you are in existence from when you get your 501c3, you have to file at least a small version of the 990 or the report to the IRS so that you prove that you still exist. If you don't file it, you disappear. You are no longer a nonprofit after a while. They'll give you some time, but once you have to continually file year after year reports to the IRS about what you do and how you exist. And by the way, those reports, the 990s, are public documents. So anybody can tell how much you're paying your executive director. They can tell your finances. That's made public. It's listed on Candid's GuideStar listing as well, because it's pulled directly from IRS records. So know that that's a public bit of information. So I'm getting towards the end here, and I want to talk about some other things that are related. And please do continue to send in any questions that you have. We'll make sure we get them near the end here. Of course, alternatives to nonprofits are other ways that you can participate. You can volunteer, you can serve on a board. You don't have to start your own nonprofit if you can find another that is doing the kind of things that you care about. Another way to not go and do the full legal process, but make yourself eligible for potential grants, is called fiscal sponsorship. And I mentioned this earlier. Fiscal sponsorship is an agreement between you, a project, an individual, an entity that's not a nonprofit, a 501c3, and a nonprofit that actually exists. So the existing nonprofit, the existing 501c3, partners with you. And you get the benefit of their 501c3, so they can get grants from a grant maker and gifts that are tax deductible, and donate and give that money directly to you as a partner in this. Fiscal sponsorship is what a lot of nonprofits start out with in order to make it possible for them to get other donations. I'm going to go directly to our website right now because I think the most important thing to share with you is that, because there's so many good bits of information on there. This is our Candid website. It's candid.org. The place I want to take you to is called Learning, Candid Learning. So it's learning.candid.org. This is a section of our website. The reason why it's good is that it has pretty much answers to as many questions as we can get on there. So hopefully you're seeing this. It has the training section. I mentioned that we have courses in fundraising, we have courses in proposal writing and seeking grants. We have classes on measuring your impact. All of these, except for one, this is our 4-week intensive thing that costs money, but all the other trainings are free. And they're offered live. They're also offered in self-paced ways of getting them. In the help and knowledge section, there's some great resources here that answer questions. One place you might want to start is the nonprofit startup and early. Assess your readiness by looking at some of the trainings and the articles we have. Also, by helping you find specific locations for where you can find help from us, and then some basic answers to questions. These are all drawn from our help articles, which are also available in this column. But for example, if you're looking for board members for your nonprofit, how do I get noticed by more funders? Can I conduct fundraising in multiple states? A lot of the things about international fundraising are also answered here. So if you go into the help articles on the whole, you will find dozens of answers to questions about, for example, let's just put in board, and you can see what's the board's role in fundraising? How do I find board members? Where can I find information about legal duties? Can the executive director also be on the board? All of these things have details. They go into detail about the answer to the question, and then they link to some of the best resources that are out there that we've vetted, have links to different books and oftentimes to different trainings that will help you out. This is all free information. There's also a section in here in the help articles that go into detail about fiscal sponsorship. How do I find a fiscal sponsor? How do I create a fiscal sponsor policy? If you can't find what you're looking for, there's also a little section that says Ask Us. I'm going to wrap up here because we're right at time, but I want to just share the last couple of slides. There's no one right answer to how you should do your nonprofit and how you should run it. Just know that it has advantages. You can get grants. You have a formal structure with limited liability, but it does cost money. It takes time. You get scrutinized by the public, and you share control with the board of directors. Can't answer which you should do, but take a look at our startup resources and reach out to us to help, and SCORE can help as well. That's where I am. I'm going to turn this back over to Bob and see if there are any final questions. Let's see, it looks like we have a couple of questions in here. How easy it is for a nonprofit to do fiscal sponsorship for an individual or foreign nonprofit. I would say that the ease of doing a fiscal sponsorship involves whether that fiscal sponsor agrees to the conditions of it. It's basically a contract that you sign between you and the fiscal sponsor. So it's good to find an organization that does that on a regular basis. There are some that do it nationally. The Tide Center is one of them. If you look on those fiscal sponsor help screens, you'll find it. Social enterprise that employs young adults with disabilities. Do we have info? I'm not sure what you mean by that. That would be something that is definitely created. It would depend on your region. It would depend on who else is doing that. I would encourage you to work with the local SCORE office to do some research on that. And I think that's it. I think I've answered all the things.
David, so I put in the chat, I'm about to hit the enter button,
Yeah.
2 handouts that you have that I think will be helpful to everybody. One
Okay.
is starting a nonprofit right for you, and then the other one is are you ready to start a nonprofit? So I'm going to hit the enter key right now,
Okay.
and let's see. Here we go.
I'll just say that, yeah, take a look at the handouts. There's my email address if you have additional questions. If I can't answer you, we'll probably be able to refer you to somebody who can. So, and it's been my pleasure to join you all today.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all joining us. Look forward to seeing you on other workshops through SCORE. Feel free to contact mentors. They're free, and they will be very, very helpful. So I want to say take care, have a great afternoon, and talk to you soon.
See you again. Thank you all.